up, Val?
I don't know. Not much.
Not much. We are back.
We're back.
In the studio here at Icon Music School of Production, Icon
right.
Collective.
That's right. Our home sweet home.
Home sweet home. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm drinking my latte, feeling alive and well.
Nice.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm excited. We had a really fun time with this conversation today, I would say.
Honestly, someone that, I'm pretty close with,
Yeah.
artist by the name of Medasin.
Yes.
I think a handful of people listening to this already know who he is.
I would hope so. And I will say, I was someone who was familiar with him, but I'd never met him before.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated, he's really funny.
Yes.
I think from the get-go, if you're listening to this episode, hopefully you'll stick around for a little longer and hear him talking about the intro of being bald. Incredible intro.
Great intro. Maybe the best one we've had so far.
Honestly, probably. But then obviously we also talk about his new music and also his previous music career and kind of how it's all led him up to where he is now. But I really enjoyed talking to him. I feel like we learned a lot about him, but then also got to have some like actual genuine thoughtful conversation about music trends or culture trends and stuff we've all observed. So I love our conversations when we have those.
Absolutely. Yeah. I worked with, we did his first show when he was like 18 years old.
Yeah.
This is like 8 years ago. Mention it here on this episode, but just seeing that growth, for all of us in the last 8 years, but specifically when you see one person and they make music, it's a lot easier to track their growth because you can literally listen to it on Spotify. And I think that in his music, and he talks about this a lot, about where he is now and sort of the creative space that he's in, headspace, and just the flow and just kind of being content with what you're putting out there, whether people like it or not, or expect it from you or not.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot, especially for aspiring producers and musicians, to draw from this episode.
For sure. I feel like we got him at a great time in his life and career where he's seen a lot of things, experienced a lot of things, and has a lot of insightful knowledge and observations to share.
And don't worry, I interjected plenty of my own, per usual.
And we had a fun time.
It was great. This is a blast. Wait, stick around till the end too, because we talk about the infamous Instagram hacking story. It's really good. It's really, really good. I'm even going to drop the time code in the bio, so you make sure if you just want to, hear that part as well.
But it's okay. Don't skip ahead. Just listen to the whole thing. It's great.
Just listen to the whole thing. Just listen to the whole thing. We'll do that. All this stuff.
Enjoy.
All right.
I look so bald, man.
It's good.
I look like the dude.
You look great.
I look like the dude that on the CPR tutorial poster in all the schools. Like I feel like I just look like that.
That's hilarious.
Straight up.
Yeah,
like look at that thing. Look at this. I just look like
you're like the CPR
man.
dummy.
I just look like man.
All right.
This is
generic
man.
drawing of man.
Yeah, exactly.
I was telling Valerie this before you came in. I'm a frequenter on r/bald on Reddit. Have you ever been on there?
No.
Why are you in r/bald?
Well, no, because it was suggested to me, just because, maybe because we're at that age,
It has to be like you're a hair transition as well.
I see.
You're not
I'm changing the whole.
You're trying to emotionally prepare.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm in there. I'm like, prepping myself, because I'm more into like the acceptance of like time and be like, yeah, it's cool. It's cool when you're kind of,
dude,
you're down with it,
Let me tell you about being bald.
Please.
Honestly.
Honestly.
It's great, and I think it's really good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Well, I went through it early. You know what I mean? Like I'm 26, and I've been bald since I was fucking. I mean, I can grow hair.
Yeah.
But it's just not gonna look very good. So it's best to be bald and.
Best to be bald. That's your
best to be bald. New merch dropping soon.
Okay, wait, but what else is so good about being bald? Because I honestly, I'm really curious because as a woman, we were also kind of talking about this when Chad revealed that he's in r/bald.
Mm-hmm.
We know nothing about being bald or like the hair transition for men.
Yeah.
I feel like now I'm getting to an age where more people talk about it.
And the other thing, the reason why I thought it was a really positive and fun thing to be on that subreddit is because it's other men who are bald who have made the jump to shaving their heads to encourage other men to take the leap.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why.
And that's where I'm going with this. I need to hop in there and maybe give them.
Yeah, you belong. You are bald.
Yeah.
No, I hate Reddit. We'll get to that later, but I hate Reddit. No, but I think that. I mean, what do you think? As a girl, there's a guy, right?
Yeah.
And there's a guy that's bald,
Mm-hmm.
and a handsome bald man, buff, looks good, healthy,
Buff and bald.
buff and bald. And then there's like a guy, just for the sake of keeping it equal, we'll say he's kind of buff too, but he's like, he's hanging on,
right?
And it's kind of
like
just
strands.
Yeah, it's just he's got some little some squigglies like up top, and you're just like, dog.
Well,
or even worse, he's like, some people have some hair and you can tell, because I've done this shit. Like they're trying to hide it. Like they're trying to
wear the hat.
Yeah, wear the hat, and I would like get my hair cut in a specific way where it like fills in the spots. But it's like at a certain point, I'm sorry if it's hitting too close to home. I don't know where you're at with this, but it. Yeah, and once I just was like, dude, I'm going bald. And luckily I have like a decently shaped head. I think some people have like a
great shaped head.
Yeah, some people have like a peanut head, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
Well, those are the two things I saw a lot in Reddit is head shape and beard growth.
Beard support.
Those are the two things that people
huge.
Well, I'll tell you as a woman, to respond to your question, I have a lot of sympathy for people going through that transition, because I feel like as women we totally get that, because it's all the societal pressure of like what you're supposed to look like. But honestly, I feel like the buff guy that's bald versus buff guy that's holding on, I'm like, respect a bald guy who just like decided that like,
you gotta own yourself.
It's
way sexier to just own yourself. Yeah. This is me.
And I understand, but I'm also very sympathetic to like, you don't get there overnight.
Oh, 100%.
So it's like, I get it.
I'm sorry.
Do what you got. No. But I'm just saying, as a woman, I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I understand, and I'm glad to hear the conversation around your transition.
I mean, that's how I feel. If I see someone, I want to encourage them too, and just be like, bro, like you look great.
I love that energy too, because like there's a lot of that in the subreddit, and it just makes me like stoked that like people can rally behind people making a transition in their life that is difficult, because it's like I was saying to Val, it's like an illusion that you're living in.
Yeah.
That eventually you have to liberate yourself from, And I think also recently I was watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan again. I watch it every year, and it's just like he's the greatest maybe person ever, at least in sport.
Yeah.
He was fucking bald. Like it's amazing. Really it's like that's an inspiration, for people. He made
bald
it look
icon.
great. I honestly think that he advanced that for many people. So
wow.
That's a good way to get started, I guess.
Wow. What an amazing start to the conversation. I love how deep you got with like the illusion of what you're holding on to and being real.
No, it's true.
Relatable.
And I think once you do make that leap and go bald, you grow as a person internally too. Like it helps you just own yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're put in a place where you have to own yourself.
Yeah.
It's like there's no hiding anymore eventually.
True.
And then I think my swag increased.
Yes.
Internally.
That's cool.
Yeah. Once I just started shaving my head, I was like,
side effect of being bald, swag will increase.
Yeah.
I love that. That's just like owning it, and just really like being the master of your domain, so to speak. Because I think that we all like, there's a lot of illusions that we create, and it's okay. See, like my whole thing is like, I'm never trying to wake a sleepwalker. Like I feel like people need to get there on their own.
Yeah.
So that's why when I read the discourse on those like channels and stuff, like there's part of like you want to be respectful to a person for like wanting to, like ignorance is bliss a lot of times.
Yeah.
But once you've kind of peered through the curtain and then you want to like tell someone, take the leap no matter what it is in their life. It doesn't have to just be about hair. It can be anything, But those people have to make the jump. You cannot push them,
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know if that resonates with you in like music or in other aspects of your life, but like did that, what you're saying about that translate to other areas too, about that swag?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, like honestly, as silly as it sounds, the music is the same way.
Yeah.
Like you have to, especially for me, like, because you've seen me
Mm-hmm.
throughout the whole thing. It's like,
yeah,
I think that once you start becoming successful in like a format of something,
mm-hmm.
like I think for me the format was like, just broadly put, electronic music, we'll say.
Mhm.
Totally.
And it's like, oh, this is working. I can like mold what I'm good at to like fit this thing that people want, and maybe sneak in like my personality and character in there.
Totally.
But yeah, I feel like you got to own yourself at some point. Like you got to be like, this is what I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like this style of music. I mean, it could be so many different things, or this type of show, and you just got to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you'll just be unhappy.
Mm.
Well, no, I don't even want to say that, because it depends on who you are. That's how I felt. Some people like just
Like having a formula almost.
yeah, having a formula or fitting into like a thing.
Well, you know what it is also, what I've identified. A lot of people that I see come through the doors of Brownies Lemonade. Now, for Medasin, I met you when you were a young person. I think that you may have been 18 years old or pretty
I think
young.
so.
Yeah. So we did the first show of his collective at the time, Film Noir. It was in a busted down art gallery warehouse space on La Brea, very close to where I used to live, Mid City. Anyway, long story short, we brought these kids out, and like there was like that kind of like Odd Future energy. They were like young. It was Oshi's first show. He came over from the UK. There's just a lot of people where we're like, wow, these kids are gonna be something. There's a lot of personality.
That was one of the craziest shows ever.
It was insane.
It was crazy.
And those shows used to get so crazy, like you couldn't leave because it was so packed in. But to go from that to see where you are now it's granted it's been like 7 years, but it's like it's amazing to see, especially through your music and your art, that growth and like what you're talking about, that unwillingness to just like allow you to not define yourself, because what I do see happen a lot when the kids that come through Brownies and Lemonade is like they themselves growing up were bullied, or they were outsiders, or they were weird, so to speak, and their producer moniker is their way to like have their power fantasy finally, where they can be attractive to women, they can tour, they can be the headliner, the sole person.
Yeah.
Now that's another illusion that I think some people like to live in for as long as possible, Now, for you, what you were saying is that maybe sometimes, at least in this electronic music world, that necessarily wasn't who you think you are,
Yeah. No, when did that start happening for you?
Just, you mean like kind of unraveling?
Or just like starting to think about not, like it didn't feel right. Like I feel like that's like an interesting thing to start realizing. Because I feel like all those things you just described are so exciting, especially when you're young. And it's so easy to just get enveloped by you're on tour, or you're on a cool show, everyone's looking at you and all that stuff. But it takes an interesting moment for you to be like, this doesn't actually feel right.
I think it wasn't like one moment, but just generally, I think it was just playing shows and festivals, because I think I always knew, because I was always into like Flying Lotus and just like people who were kind of doing that. They were on their own, just doing whatever they wanted to do, and not morphing it to, like, I think I would just play shows, and I put out like an album called Irene, right? And I feel like that was kind of the height of my popularity and my like touring popularity. I was playing a lot of shows, and a lot of people knew that album. But I was in so many situations where I would go play a festival, and like they're just throwing a bag at me, and I have no production costs. So I'm just like, sure, I'll come play your festival. And then I like pull up, and like I will play this festival. And it's weird, dude. Say I'll play for a crowd of, just for the sake of math, we'll say 1,000 people, right? I would say at least 5% of the crowd is a fan of my music.
Okay.
Right? The other 95% will not be a fan of my music, and they're just a festival goer that wants to have fun. So I'm in this position where I have this album that is not, it is not a fun album to listen to live. It's not. Like, you play it live, it does not really work. It works at a headline show where everyone knows it.
They're paying to see that.
Like,
and that's what they want to see. And that's a whole other thing, because sometimes I get so used to doing festivals that sometimes I'll be playing like bangers at a headline show, and then like I'll play an Irene track, and then whoa, and I'm like,
what?
Yeah.
Dude, that's like emotional to me. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please say whatever you need.
But I would play so many festivals. Where I'd be in that position where, I'll play a huge slot, but I couldn't play my stuff. I'll try to play it. I'm like, this is very awkward. Don't like this. Let me just go to the safe, And and then I'll play a festival, and I'll get paid a great amount of money that my parents would be proud of, and then I'll leave the stage. But I'll still feel like that wasn't what I wanted. You know what I mean? And that's the beginning of the journey, I think, of figuring that out, because now from there it's like, am I, what's the word? Am I ungrateful? Is this not enough? Is it like, bro, just like chill and do what you're doing. You're making great money. Like, why would you, are you being like artistically snobby? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which I think I definitely am to some degree, which I think you should be if you care about your art.
Right. That's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
Well, let me take it back then a little bit, because I remember for me in your career, because I've been there for all of it, for the most part, since that.
Literally all of it.
Yeah. And honestly, working with you throughout all these years has always been amazing. I just want to say that. Just like, you're a great dude.
Likewise.
We got a great relationship. Val, sorry that you're coming in.
I'm just here for the
vibes. I don't want to make this a third wheel thing. But,
should I leave?
No, that's cool. But I remember one watershed moment for you is when you were doing those Cali shows at the end of 2016, I want to say. And you played that show at the Observatory in OC. I remember you came off the stage. We were backstage, and all these people were coming up to you. I know Getter was there. A lot of like people that were really established in the industry, and they were gassing you up. Like, bro, you were it. You were the future. And let's be honest, like, the set you were playing was like, it was trap. It was heavy trap. It was like a lot of really like just like high energy, the kind of stuff you're talking about that people might expect for you to play at a festival. And I wonder, like, at the time, like, what was going through your head when, like, all of that stuff was first presented to you, it seemed like, and these doors were opening. And then,
I think, well, that's a complicated question.
Yeah, because that was, like, where I think what you're talking about, that's when it started. That was, like, the first part of it.
Yeah.
And then it led to, like, what you were talking about, like, doing the festivals.
I agree, yeah.
I was interested in, like, what that inflection point is, because it happens in people's careers where like that was like a moment where everyone was like, oh, now we're noticing you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that, man, it's hard. Like, because I've put out, the first thing that makes things a little confusing for me is I've put out so much different music.
Yes.
Like, I've put out the Pink Polo with Masego. I've put out the Zoo.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Do you have any idea how far apart those are, like demographic and vibe wise? Like,
oh, and the Portugal the Man remix. I'm sure there's millions of people that have discovered you through that.
Exactly.
And then we're like, they hear the Zoo.
Yeah, and they're like, what is he doing? Is this the same guy? Is this a glitch?
Yeah.
But, so I don't know.
But it speaks to your versatility and like how, the depth of where you could go depending.
I agree, yeah. And that's another thing. I'll come back to that.
Yeah,
but
come back to that.
I think that, like, having people notice, and it's hard to even remember because I was so young and I was so, I think, not in a bad way. It's just how it is when you're younger. I think my perspective was more polluted by like ego or like wanting people to like me, or maybe I'll do a thing or like go in a direction because I'm getting this reward and this dopamine hit of like, oh my God, Getter put me on his story, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
totally. Those things mean a lot.
Yeah. And
yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just know that right now, that stuff means like nothing to me. Like, and not even in like a.
You're above it or whatever.
It's yeah, I just mean it's just like, if someone wants to put me on their story and like appreciate me, I'll be like, thanks, bro. But it's like, I don't know. I'm just not chasing that anymore because I've had enough money and enough notoriety. I think at least, like, I mean, the ladder goes pretty high, you know, but in my mind, I think I've had enough to learn that that's not what. God, it sounds like so cliche, but it's just not what really matters to me. And I think that does matter to some people, and that's totally fine. If you're like a business person, you know what I mean? And music is a business to you, and you like the sport of like getting higher fees and grinding, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of veering off of what your original question was. I'm
sorry.
No,
I mean, I don't think so. I think it's really interesting. And Val, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. But it's like, I'm there for that breaking point for so many artists, like literally hundreds. Like, you know, I've seen it. And depending on that person's temperament or their outlook, you know, you're a very grounded person, you know, but it affects everyone differently, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And just seeing where you are now from that point, it's amazing to see that personal growth. But for other people, you know, that ego, that disease of more, always wanting more, bigger billing, more streams, higher bag, you know, bigger bag, higher fee. It's unending, you know? So where you were saying like you are content, that's not something that you hear someone say with like actual conviction where you're like, yeah, well, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard because it could seemingly never end really at that point. So,
yeah,
you know.
And I think it doesn't for some people. I don't know, it's hard to know if someone genuinely just likes the sport of what they're doing and getting the higher fees and grinding, or if it's like, or they are chasing the hamster on the treadmill or whatever. But you know, I don't know.
Well, I think that also sometimes you're just like, you could just say I don't know, and that is a sufficient answer.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And you're still going through like transitioning and like trying new things. I think like I was listening to the new album, which is fantastic. Gotta tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was curious because I was reading some of the stuff you were posting as well, talking about how you really like went away for a while, and it felt like this was something really cathartic for you, really different for you.
Totally.
So, how did that feel to like prepare this project and put it out and be doing something so different from before? Because I feel like you took like a 3-year break, right?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. And I'm sure fans were like, where did you go? What are you doing? And then we're so excited for your return. And there's a lot of feeling that gets built up during a time when you're away. So how was that for you?
Dude, it was like everything. It was confusing and scary and exciting. I don't know. I think that was, you know, yeah, when you say that, it put into perspective for me that I definitely still am in that transition. Like I think that was the first album that I was like, I kind of said like, fuck, like everything. Yeah, because I would always, like, I think in my albums in the past, and I mean this in no, you know, I love every person I've ever worked with or every like feature I've ever done. But you know, there's a lot of like, you know, we need a vocal track. Like this is sick, but we need a vocal track, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
like external forces kind of telling you that you need things.
Yeah, and like, and you know, internal forces too. Like, oh, maybe I should format this song this way so it'll kind of work or feel more like the last thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like with this, I really tried to almost like trigger like a fan, like not just to be mean, but I'm just like, I literally don't care at all. I'm just sprinting forward like in musical growth and just exploring. Like drums was a big part of that. Like I was learning a lot about playing and recording drums and just kind of taking all the energy that I put into touring and doing things that I think I finally was like, I don't like this. Why am I doing this? And I'm like, let me do something I like. And yeah, so I think that album was me just like, I don't even care if it's good or bad, or I don't even care. This is just like me having fun and like aggressively not trying to, even though I think there's still some element of me like trying to appease. I don't think you can fully get away from that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
in a different way, I feel like. Like, it sounds like you were just making stuff that feels interesting to you, whether it was something new to you or...
Yeah.
'Cause that was something I noticed, like, listening to the songs in the album. They're so full of, like, texture and so many layers, and it does sound really different than a lot of stuff that you hear nowadays. So I feel like when you say that, it feels very clear to me that you were experimenting and just having fun.
Yeah.
As someone who's a producer,
Totally.
music maker. Yeah.
Yeah, just experimenting and having fun and letting a lot of my like influences shine. Like I think that there's stuff that I've always loved. Like I don't know, it could be anything. Like I love like jazz. I love Radiohead. I love like, but you know, I'll kind of be like, yeah, but that's over there. Let me make this Portugal the Man remix and like let me stay in my box. You know what I mean?
I mean, the Portugal the Man remix is one of my favorite songs of all time.
It's an absolute.
I'm not just saying that because you're here. I would have. Yeah.
I mean, dude, on top of all of that, there's also like the culture evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like as much as I could be like distance myself from that song, that was just a different time of electronic music. Like everything we're talking about is me and what I'm going through, but you know, in the past, we'll say 7 years since I've been doing all this, a lot has changed. And,
yeah,
like,
what do you feel like
you're
noticing as far as culture evolving?
Oh my gosh.
One thing that's changed, of course, not while you're thinking on it, but is the way that music has been distributed, right? Because SoundCloud is how we've discovered you, but you were one of the success stories of Spotify streaming for someone in your genre.
Yep. I made the transition.
Yeah.
From like SoundCloud to Spotify.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't survive that.
Yeah. Seriously.
And then I guess you can catch us up also since then.
Yeah. Man, I don't. Let's see.
There's a lot. There is honestly a lot.
He's downloading it.
It's a big question.
Seriously, I mean, it's just crazy. Like,
I'm just curious because when you say that, I mean, you're so right. Because I feel like we talk about it a lot on several conversations we've had about just coming from like the blog era, and we talk a lot about the differences between then and now. Some good, some bad, you know. But it's so different when you're in a studio by yourself, making music on like an open canvas. Like, you know, like you're saying, like the Portugal the Man remix, it sounds great and still timeless in many ways, but at the same time there is like tied to it the time of when it came out, you know. So yeah, I'm just curious like what cultural observations you feel like you're feeling the most.
Man, I'm trying to think of the top hitters because there's a lot. I mean, dude,
more than one.
Seriously, like as much as I love making music, I think I also love, as cheesy as it sounds, like music philosophy. Like it's like a hobby of mine. Like I'm always thinking and observing what's going on out there. I mean,
same.
I think one of
honestly same.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest things from then and now, I would say, I think a good place to start, which is kind of broad, is it just feels like a free for all kind of. Like it feels like they're used to. I think that the boundaries of like a lot of genres and like scenes have just kind of dissolved, and kind of like a lot of that has to do with even Splice. Like the actual creation of music has become very different and a lot more accessible. Like the threshold of how much you have to learn and practice. Like I've been making beats since I was 12.
Yeah.
And I had to make 10 trillion beats till I made one Portugal the Man remix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think, like, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think someone could make a Portugal the Man-esque remix within 1 year of like having a laptop and Splice. And so I think there's that. And then there's a lot more music overall, like tons more music, also sort of because of that, because it's a lot easier to make, and a lot of people want to just, make music. And
I mean, I feel like I totally agree both on the good and bad side of what you're saying, because I feel like on the good side, we're seeing people be more experimental and deviate from like, oh, you're supposed to make music that sounds like this because it's this genre. But then on the bad side, there's so much accessibility to being able to do that there's also a lot of bad music being made that I would say sometimes the older powers that play in the music industry are like, that's what's worked in the past. Let's pick that up and do that. And you're like, things are so much better and more interesting if you dig a little deeper, right?
Yes. And I also want to say, like, just because you got me thinking about the industry side of it, like the manager side and the A&R side, or the music influencer side of it. I think a few years ago, like 5-7 years ago, it felt, again, like there's these scenes and you can pretty easily identify them and get involved as like an A&R or a person or a manager, and you can be like, let's uplift this. This is great and this is popping off. And it felt like you could really, use your, like, it was a creative endeavor in some sense to be a manager, and I think it still is. But I think also today it's so much that people in the industry, I mean, for a while we're just looking at TikTok metrics because it's like there's so much shit out there. I don't even know where to really begin. Like, let's just like look, what are the numbers doing? You know what I mean? And that was kind of the beginning of like, what are the numbers doing?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And, you know, how many TikToks are you making? And
there's
a lot to unpack, too. Gosh.
Which is, and then I like
a lot to unpack
I'm
today.
so glad. I love a music thinker, which is why we sit here and have conversations with music people all the time. But I love, like, again, I like to see both the good and the bad of things that you're saying. And I feel like there's, again, both good and bad, right? It's like the obvious bad part is I feel like we did get lost in the sauce of like getting too caught up in the numbers to the point where, I mean, we see it. There's like some artists or some songs out there where you're like, just because they got 1 billion views on TikTok doesn't mean they're a great artist.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, I feel like we've seen a whole new type of artist, for better, for worse, where like the artists that know how to be both an artist but also be a person on camera and also direct their own content. And like that's a whole different kind of person. Like not every artist can do that.
Totally.
But we've seen some really amazing people figure that out.
Yeah, it made me think about when you were saying that. It made me think about when I was an A&R at a major label a couple years ago, and one of the things that they have access to are all different kinds of, you know, A&R tools, like these really cool Spotify playlists that use algorithmic data to generate like every week like brand new stuff. So like you'll have different subcategories of every genre. So we're talking about there's hundreds of different kinds of playlists that you can access. So it's like specifically electronic music. There's like Pulse. So it's the stuff that's like doing really well right now when you can see it trending. And then there's another one that's like Edge. It's like the stuff that's on the cutting edge, but it's making a little progress. And then there's like the mega hits. And so you like look through these playlists and you just are refreshing and you like are just digging through. But mind you, all A&Rs have these tools at their disposal if they work for a major label. So then I was like, what people who are actually in culture have to look at this stuff and actually listen and be like, and then go and look at the social media and be like, no, there's actually something here that is
like
tangible, has texture. Yeah, you can't
stuff.
just look at numbers like solely. It won't work. But the discrepancy for me at the major label was that I was able to identify the culture stuff and bring it to them. And then a lot of times it'd be like, yeah, but there's like no listenership. There's no numbers here. But I'm like, yeah, not yet. But like one example is 100X, right? The first week it came out,
That's a great
I saw the
example.
video. I was on it, got it to, you know, the label and everything. And it just, they didn't see the value in it yet. And I was like, but you understand that there's like a culture here. Like you're saying, there's a scene. There's like the people that, you know, there's gender fluidity. There's like the hyper pop stuff. There's internet pockets that are going to champion this. A couple months later, they're opening for Brockhampton on their world tour. You know, it just happens fast. But if we only rely on data, you're never going to see the things that actually have value. You know, the things that can't be reflected in a Spotify playlist. You know?
I agree. And I think a lot of them know that too, but it's just not worth the risk to them, or I don't know. But also I want to say to your point that I don't think it is a good or a bad thing. I don't think any of this is good or bad. It's just what's happening. Like And it's not even exclusive to music either. I mean, this is a worldwide technology evolution thing. I mean, the same way that there is an overwhelming amount of music to keep up with, and there's less like almost meaningful viral moments where everyone comes together and is like Gwen Stefani or like, you know what I mean?
What a name to throw out.
Yeah,
I love that. Yeah.
Or think about like Damn Daniel. You know what I mean? That doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, sometimes it does, but it's just like, oh, damn, all right, bye. You know what I mean? It's like there's 20,000 Damn Daniels every day, so it's.
Yeah, I think you can't even mention Grimace Shake now, man. I mean, by the time this airs, like people are gonna be like, "Dude,
that was a big one, though. That was a big one." Yeah,
no, but I agree. Like TikTok is actually even shortening what even the lifespan of virality is to like.
It's really? It's like on the back end, you're saying?
No, I'm just saying like what you're saying. Like, Damn Daniel could go on Ellen and like get a lifetime supply of bands, and like there was like it could exist and have its moment. The moments almost feel like as fleeting and elusive as, you know, like just like a dragonfly lifespan. It's just like it comes and it goes, and then no one ever even knew it was there. You know, it's like 24 hours tops or whatever. Because even when you were talking about like the SoundCloud, Spotify stuff, you know, when you first started to make that transition, like even then I was telling people, I think culture is changing like month to month or year to year, which at the time was really fast. Because it used to be decades. You used to be able to be like, oh, that's a song from the 80s.
Yeah.
But now there's like, you know, we're living in a perpetual now. So if you hear a song from like 5 years ago, it can trend on TikTok because it sounds exactly like what's kind of being produced now. There's no like distinction between when something came out or not, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's good or bad. It means that anyone could kind of succeed at any time. It's random, but it's not like there's the song now that everyone is jumping behind, or like you're saying, you know, there's the meme now that everyone's talking about, including your mom, including your coworkers. It's just we don't have that.
Yeah, well, maybe we still kind of do. We just have there's a lot more going on at the same time, so it feels less contrasty. Like there's like Yeet. You know what I'm saying? I feel like Yeet is one I can think of that was a big cultural deal and like still is, and. Yeah.
No, I mean they come and go, but I don't want to get too caught up in like me always being a prisoner of the moment and talking about how. But you said it best. I always say the same thing. It's not good or bad. It's just different.
It's whatever you think it is. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't tell anyone if it's good or bad. It's just how you think about it. But
it makes sense. I feel like you did yourself a big favor in that case, as far as like having the internal realization as an artist to be like, something didn't feel right with you, and then you did something that felt right. Like you can sit alone in your studio in your room and be really happy with the music you make, whether or not it goes viral or has a moment or something like that.
You'd think. You'd think.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
Yeah. No, well, it's not quite the case.
I don't think anyone's ever truly. I mean, like, I think in a medium to longer term way, yeah. Like I feel like I know that. If I'm doing exactly what I want to do, it's going to stand the test of time more to me. And I'll be like, I was doing what I wanted to do. And like when I die, I want to be able to look back and be like, I was doing what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, I feel like shit often. Like I think like everyone does, or everyone gets insecure about like, is this going to be good enough? And, you know, like I have a lifespan with my own songs. Like every song I've ever released was the favorite thing I've ever made ever at one point, and my brain was just surging with serotonin. But you know, a month later, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that song, like that's got to go out, huh? We got to get art for it. What does it feel like? What is the art gonna look like? Let's listen. I don't even know anymore. Jesus. Yeah, I don't know. Hit up the guy. Like and it's a little mechanical, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that it has to be. That sounds really dark.
I mean,
you can have fun with it. But I'm just saying, I just wouldn't want someone out there to listen to this and be like, damn, he's like happy. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, bro, I'm just like you. Like, and dude, that's the number one thing I tell people, because I've had a lot of these conversations after shows. You know, like I have a lot of fans from SoundCloud, and they're just like, dude, how do I do this? And I'm like, well, I could like tell you what I did, but ultimately if you're having fun making music, like you already won. It'd be great if you could make money. Like, money, it helps. It's not the answer, but it'll make your life a little easier. But ultimately, yeah, it's like if you're having fun and enjoying making music, it's like I don't know what else that you could get.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's amazing like listening to the most recent album and hearing you definitely there's a freedom for sure in the music, you know. And quite often, especially with like electronic adjacent stuff, I'm like hearing things that it just reminds me of other things very clearly, but that are kind of similar. Like, you hear like one disco song and you're like, well, that's a similar bass line or a sample to another disco song, or maybe it's literally derived from that, right?
Yeah.
With your album, it made me think about things that had nothing to do with, it was in a totally different, like I started thinking about like the movie Birdman. It's just like it's a constant drum beat the whole time. It's just like all percussion, and it just like hits a crescendo at certain points, and there's a drum backing to the entire movie. And so, yeah, I just recently watched that movie, and it just the first couple songs and throughout the album just really made me think of that movie.
That's so.
And
funny.
then also the movie Whiplash, which was one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they played any part in it, but if that's what it's evoking for me, on top of like of course a lot of the lush parts of the album and stuff, but it's great when you can just take someone outside of like their normal comfort zone of it's because comparison is always going to be part of it subconsciously. I think a lot of stuff.
You mean comparison as far as reference points of like, oh, I understand this as being a combination of this and this.
Well, yes, because what I see with a lot of people, especially people who aren't in music, is when they hear something, the first thing, an impulse that people want to say is, "Oh, it sounds like this."
Oh God,
right?
Yeah.
But that's just because people want to understand things, like especially things that are vague or abstract. They want to try to put it in a
familiarity. Yeah,
exactly.
That's the most. That can be the most triggering and the most useful sentence ever.
Yeah,
to like show someone a song and they're like, "Oh, like 10 seconds in, this reminds me of this." You're like, "Of what?" And then you like look it up. You're like, "Oh my God!" Now I have to delete the whole song and start over because it already exists.
Yeah, and I've definitely learned not to say that too much. So I'm sorry if you didn't like the movie Birdman, but
no, I actually haven't seen it.
Okay, cool. I highly recommend it.
But any association that you come up with I think it's interesting. The album's a little confusing, probably.
How so?
Like I would imagine it'd be confusing. But from the outside looking at it, but the way I see it, I think that over the period of the last 3 to 4 years, that everything is related to me. Like all types of music are related. Like this beautiful string section in this movie scene is the same thing to me as this beautiful string section that, like, I don't know, everything's just related. Or this weird Radiohead texture, weird synth thing. It's like, you could hear it in a Vince Staples beat too, or like some weird beat. Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? I just feel like there's really no, like, and it's not a good thing necessarily from a marketing perspective, because that is a useful tool to have that person. Like, I bounce stuff off my girlfriend and she's just like, "Oh, this reminds me of this" sometimes, or and that's you need to know those things or how it's going to land on someone's ears. But
totally. Well, I think the everyday person needs things like genres or comparisons because music is so nebulous. To maybe people like us who can sit around and talk about it for hours, it's not.
You know what? Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I'm realizing this right now for myself.
Ooh.
I want to pass that on. I think that's part of what I wanted to pass on with the album is like, guys, like this is all the same shit.
Yeah.
Music is music.
Yeah.
Like if you're hearing this song and you feel like you want to like it, but you don't understand where it falls, that's okay.
Yeah.
You can hear something and not have to understand what it is and take it in almost like meditatively and just like let it hit you. And you don't have to, again, not that there's no use to that, like, but yeah, that's part of almost my message, I feel like, with that project and just music in general. It's just like, if you think that this is so different, I actually might disagree. I don't think it's that different. I think that you understand the components of all of this, and you've probably enjoyed a lot of music that had all these ingredients in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just you can't figure out where it lands in your head. So it's like,
well, yeah,
you know what I mean?
That feels like an old school, traditional way of like how a lot of artists thought about stuff. I think in a bygone era of like the 90s were like, in my opinion, I think an era where creativity and music on its own terms and merits was at an all-time high. I do think that things have changed a lot since then, for good or for bad.
I mean, I feel like I always talk about in dance music or electronic music specifically, it's such a cannibalistic genre because it's like all the different subgenres are so different, all grouped under one umbrella, and then they go to war with each other. So it's like, who even is electronic music? People will be like, I only listen to techno, I only listen to dubstep, and you're like, there's actually so much that's related to all of these. Like, if you go down the history of like where things were created and who was playing what back in the day, like people used to play all the genres and it was like not that big of a deal, or like there's a lot of crossover. But so I like your message. I like that you've just realized that message.
Like another one I just thought of when you said that was, I remember I went to Electric Zoo in New York because I happened to be in New York like doing something else, and my manager was there with an artist. She was like, do you want to go? I was like, sure. And like pretty recently, like 2 years ago, 2 years ago or something. And there's a lot of house music. And this was kind of when I was like locked in the studio a lot, studying music, making music, and I haven't heard house music live in a while. And I was just hearing all this house music everywhere, and I was like, this is literally like I've been listening to a lot of African music, like old African music from the 70s, like Fela Kuti. And I'm like, this is not the exact same thing, but I'm just like, to me, I'm like, why would there have to be a, like, you could take a Fela Kuti song and, like, probably scoot it from 118 to 120 BPM and then literally just put a Splice 4 on the floor kick, and that would go off in this environment. But, so I was like...
But I'm sure it has. Like, we're literally getting...
of course it has. Well, I mean, you're right. But
we're getting to the point where, like, people are doing that much and it's being considered a new song, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way it's always been, though. Like, that's the thing we have to consider is, like, when you look at the white label records from these, like, rave records in the 90s, some of it was just, like, they sped it up a little bit, added a kick behind it. You know, it's just like, oh, print it. It's a bootleg. It's a, you know? So,
well, every generation needs to learn, you know? If the kids don't know what they don't know.
So.
Well, no, and that's true. I think we're just always going to be judged by the tools that we have at that given moment, you know? So you mentioned Splice as an example, and I think that some people are debating whether it's been a net positive for music production in general, you know?
Splice is in a crazy position. I don't even think that they intended to have this much influence over music. Like, they really have changed music for everybody. Like, even in genres that are unrelated, it's had, like, a splash effect. Splice is interesting. All I will say on that is I would hope anyone that has that amount of influence and knows it, which they definitely do, can be as, like, pure as possible and really make well-informed decision and get a lot of outside perspective on, you know, culture and things, like, you know, and not fall too far into, like, investors and building a big company, because that's the same thing we're all suffering from everywhere right now. It's like there's all these companies that just want to become as rich as possible at the expense of you being addicted and, like, ruining society. I mean, it's happening everywhere, you know? And it's almost like music's the last frontier where we can retreat and be happy.
It's
like,
true.
So don't fuck up music.
Oh,
please.
no, they
great
love
power comes great responsibility.
Well, wherever people can retreat and be happy, people will figure out how to monetize that too. But I think, you know, it's just, I think it's a good time for music. We talk about it all the time, but yeah, there's interesting aspects. There's results and side effects of, you know, wide access, and anyone at any time now can produce anything, and
something has happened.
Okay.
In response to that. And let me know if y'all have, like, observed this from your vantage point.
Sure.
I think that specifically the 70s has had a big resurgence, at least amongst me and like my friend group. I think a lot of my generation is rediscovering 70s music, and Spotify's kind of like pushing it. It's tight. They're like, hey, you like that Jay-Z song? This is what sampled it. Check out the album. And it's like, this album's amazing. Like, and a lot of people are into like 70s music right now, and a lot of producers are into drums. Like, that's not something exclusive to me or my album. Like, there's The Count. There's like cartoons, these guys.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of the reason that's happening is because that's hard. That's very hard to do. To get like a crispy 70s drum sound, like that sounds like it was recorded from the ground up, that you can't do that on Splice, And even if you could get it on Splice, if you didn't go through the whole era of learning about drum sounds and like from the past and all this, then you're not even going to present it in a track like in a well-educated way. Like people will, be able to tell. Like, I think that it's almost, we had to raise the skill cap for music in response to Splice, because I think a lot of us were like, damn, the thing that made my musical personality is now downloadable, like immediately.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I think you're totally right. I mean, I feel like there is something obviously very valuable about like the texture or the authenticity of like music that was made back in the day. And with all the music that's coming out now, you do have to find things that make it stand out or make it sound different than what's out there. And even to the untrained ear, you can tell like when something hits a little different or it feels different than the other music that you're listening to. So yeah, I think you're right on the money there.
Yeah, the 70s. It's a really good observation too, because like, 70s, I've said this forever, but is the best decade of music maybe ever.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's because
interesting.
So like the Beatles ended.
You don't agree?
No, I mean I've just honestly never.
Which is okay if you don't.
No, I just think I've never considered it.
So I'll give you my argument, and then I want to ask a few more questions about you personally, because you're here, and
sure,
because we could talk about the 70s a lot, but
sure.
The Beatles broke up in '69, and Altamont, like the end of the hippie movement and all that stuff. But in the 70s, you get cocaine. That's a big part. But you get almost the purest form of creativity before electronic music and a lot of like that kind of stuff. It influences production so much. So things are still analog and just like in every genre, you have the most innovative people. You have like Stevie Wonder. You have Led Zeppelin, you have Creedence, you have like just like titans of every Fleetwood Mac, people prolific, doing tons of nose candy and just going crazy. But there was real sadness, and we talk about recessions and war and how that influences it. All of that stuff. It was just like this perfect concoction for creativity, and it just from the 80s onward. There's some great stuff in the 80s, don't get me wrong. Love me some 80s. But you almost cannot separate commercial from music from that point on after the 70s.
From 80s on?
After the 70s, yeah. Disco was a huge thing, obviously, and that was when people were rebelling super hard against Disco Sucks. That was like a huge movement. Check out the Chicago White Sox campaign where they literally exploded a bunch of disco records during the 7th inning stretch.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was like a riot at a baseball game. So people hated disco. They hated the commercial aspect and what it represented. So, but there is that healthy time in the 70s where it really required, you had to have the chops and the mind, and it all had to kind of come together.
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about. Is like people need to go back into that 70s mindset.
I think it was also like, technological golden era, because it was like we just got like fidelity. If you listen to like jazz in the mid 60s, it's crusty. And I love it. I love some of it, but it's like fidelity was low, It sounds like fried through the tape of a guy banging on the drums in the corner with this shitty ribbon mic, and I love it. That's some of my favorite stuff sometimes. But then the 70s, Yeah, it was right before we got too much control over stuff, because once we got control, like a lot of 90s drum sounds or something are very clean. Like they were trying to get away from the tape machines and all these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I don't know exactly why, but yeah, it just sounds really good. Saturation sounds good, and tape saturation, it might be gone by tomorrow. I don't know, but yeah, something about the 70s and just the machines being used and the way things sounded going through them, and again, the level of entry was very high.
Yeah.
Like, you're the Beatles, you have to find a George Martin and like you have a guy that knows how to use this huge, terrifying looking board and like and put the mic here and point it that way, and then like it's
things were tricky back then.
a lot trickier.
A lot trickier.
Yeah.
Wait, so I'm curious. Okay, what was your music upbringing entry like? Because you said you started making music around 12.
It was very beaty.
Okay.
There was a lot of beats. Like I was never like a proficient musician. I played a little bit of guitar because of my dad, but I just started making beats. I started off making like hip hop beats, like around the era of, dude, like Chief Keef and Waka and stuff like that. That was the shit I liked.
So you started in like, what was their first DAW that you were on? Fruity, yeah.
And you just learned yourself at home.
Still in Fruity Loops too. Yeah, like I just my older brother made beats.
Okay.
And he would like rap with his friends and smoke blunts.
See, people do it.
I
don't do it.
You don't have to see people do it.
His brother did it.
They did it back then. They're not doing.
Trust me,
people be doing that.
It's happening. And,
more my era.
Shout out to every stoned freestyle circle going on right now.
Well, this is on in the
Keep
background.
Keep it alive.
Yeah. But yeah, I just made beats, and I made like hard trap beats. And but then I got into like shortly after that, I got into Clams Casino and Flying Lotus, and people that still felt like they were making beats. These are beat makers, but they're like also expressing themselves. Like
Clams was like a huge inflection point for people, and is it because he really, having produced obviously for like Dipset and stuff, but like, was he the guy that was like, oh, I can actually make this artistry as well?
He was one of them for me.
Yeah, because
I didn't even know about the Dipset stuff. Like there's a EP he has called the Rainforest EP that I remember, and yeah, I just remember hearing it, and stuff was like wrong. Like there was stuff just deep. Seriously, there was stuff just deep fried with saturation. Anyone listening to this, go listen to Natural by Clams Casino, and is old. And I just remember hearing that, and it just kind of like turned my brain on. I was like, that's intentional. That's not like wrong. Because that didn't happen very often in beats in like a artistic avant-garde kind of way, So yeah, stuff like that. And same with Flying Lotus, Jay Dilla. I mean, I guess Jay Dilla lives on in Flying Lotus, and that like you'll hear his drums, and they're very like like
that was a great
swung.
impression.
Yeah,
really
that was
I
amazing.
heard I heard his first album just now in my head. Yeah. I mean, but that's so cool. Yeah, for me too, that like the beat scene stuff was really important. But you definitely went a little bit more. It's because you had that trap foundation too. So electronic music like EDM wasn't necessarily like a huge influence for you. Would you say?
It was at a certain point. It was that. It was trap beats, like hip hop beats, and then it was like Flying Lotus and Clams Casino. I can't remember the order, but there was an era. I remember the era of Animals by Martin Garrix.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
All right, now we're cooking.
Yeah.
Now we're cooking.
And okay, so I got into Zed. I loved Zed. I remember Spectrum by Zed.
Yeah.
Classics.
Yeah, and very vibrant, big chords and clear, big mixes and mastering, and it was like, oh my god, like it was, because it was new, and it was like a concentrated version of music where we're getting these new plugins and like, people were making unrealistically good sounding stuff.
Well, I think that the Animals
That's
especially,
interesting.
Animals especially was mind-blowing for people because it was it was very minimalist by the amount of elements in the song, but it was like slapping in a stadium.
Yep.
And I think Valerie and I we've talked about it. It's a running theme on our show, but it proves my theory that people like Grant grew up with that music as the pop music.
Yes.
And so now to them, it's not like it's not foreign that like electronic music is this, for me, it was never on the radio growing up, except that, Fatboy Slim and like Dirty Vegas, like some of the things that like kind of popped through. But to hear Zed on the radio growing up, this is part of, our top 40.
I was never on the radio, but I was on YouTube.
On YouTube.
I'm in the era of like Suicide Sheep and, these guys.
But the tools, but YouTube especially. But it is cool that you had that growing up. I wonder what my life would have been like if I was
interesting
hearing Martin Garrix at 12 or
I don't even know how old I wasn't 12.
Yeah, there are younger people obviously though that.
But then there was another moment, a very big moment for me was Worlds by Porter Robinson.
Yeah.
Because I loved Porter Robinson because I was kind of getting into like house music and this stuff. And how long have you been like following Porter? Like, were you following him when he was making electro house? He was an electro house DJ.
Yeah,
that's literally what he was. But like, I made music and I could hear like there's something going on here. He's got some beautiful chords and like ideas there's something different here, And I was a big fan, and I remember, he kind of like dropped off the radar for a bit, and then he came back with Worlds, and I was like, that to me was kind of the air of what like Fly Low or Clams was to, in my mind, like just beats. It was like that's what Porter now was to electronic music. It was like, this can be like personally expressive. It doesn't have to just be this like big epic sounding thing. It can be wrong and like weird and like
soft.
Yeah.
You can cry.
Yeah.
But I think it was a concept record, and not a lot of concept albums were in electronic music. Then you go and tour it under that name. That was pretty new. Like that had not been done a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like there's a lot of. I have never talked to Porter about his journey during that time, but like back to what you were saying about realizing like your music wasn't ready for like a festival hit kind of like set, and being able to translate the two. Yep. It's really interesting.
I definitely
relatable.
I almost guarantee you he's probably feeling similarly.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure he's. I feel like I remember hearing some stuff about him talking about it, because also it's like when you're so vulnerable with your music and you put it on a stage in that way, it can be like extra detrimental to feel the negative feedback.
Yeah.
But I guess like asking that question and now hearing a little bit more about your journey and everything, how are you feeling now with like the new music being out? You're returned back to the public sphere, thinking about like how you're gonna go back to like the stage, to performing live. Do you think is that on the agenda?
I'm here to announce.
Oh.
No.
Straight up no. I love that.
Dude, yeah, honestly, man.
Well, never say never.
No, not never. Absolutely not.
For now.
Not
for now, it's just not what I'm focused on. Like I feel, I'm happy to put out that album.
Yeah.
But I'm already, I'm past it already. I'm just, to me, it was almost like, all right, let's go. Like that was the first, like, I just want to put out stuff and have fun. I have another thing coming out soon that you're probably gonna hate. I'm just kidding, you won't hate it. But it's like, again, it's almost kind of a curveball, and not that it's trying to be. Like I almost want that to be a normal thing. I feel like I'm almost investing in my future, like public perception wise right now, of like, I just want to be able to do whatever I want to do and make like an ambient album and then make this album and make this weird and just have it be like, like what's next?
Yeah.
Like that's the most exciting thing to me when I'm waiting for something from one of my favorite artists. If they do something like Worlds, for example, that's just like unexpected.
Yeah.
I love that. And I want to like pass that on to people, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to get an album from someone and just be like, this is good. This is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I like it. It's like, I'm not a robot.
Well, that's what, but that is the funny thing, is that most of the criticisms that you would see of someone like Skrillex, Quest for Fire, are people being like, I wish, it was some dude from Brazil who maybe thinks that they want Bangarang again, or, and no, but like literally some fans are unable to like piece together the fact that like, no, years from now, you'll see Quest for Fire as the thing that you're comparing the next thing to. It's just right now you're so in it of what your idea of the artist is. You need to like remove yourself from that to allow the new music to have its day, to then become one of those iconic or things that we look back. Worlds wasn't Worlds when it first came out. It was definitely different.
Was to some people.
To some people.
But
it needs time. I mean, it needs
I always think about the
Avicii
tours. Stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's like when the country sounds came out, everyone literally was like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. I remember I was there at the Ultra thing and everyone was like, this is awful.
Totally.
And then look at it now. It's like iconic music,
Yeah.
So
it's a really good song, Wake Me Up. It's a good song.
And it was unexpected.
Unexpected.
Yeah.
But you have to take that risk, and I think a lot of people, I'm glad that you're taking risks and you're doing things that you want to do on your terms,
Yeah. Like, dude, I love like, I don't know. I love like Aphex Twins. Like, you could just literally, he's a mystery box. If you just shuffle to Spotify, it's like, I don't know what.
You never know what you're going to get.
Am I going to get a piano piece or an ambient piece or a drum and bass? Like, and yeah, because that's, I realized, like, I think I just, like, back to the earlier conversation, I guess, I didn't know who I was in terms of, I know what I'm good at, I know what I like, and I'm kind of being defined by the world on accident. I just kind of accidentally pop off on SoundCloud, and I get used to this process of the world telling me who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more I want to veer away from what I think the world thinks I am, it feels like I'm doing something wrong. But now I'm just like, dude, I'm like a sound scientist. I'm not an artist. I don't like being an artist. I don't like being this one thing that has to promote things and like uphold a thing. I'm just a sound scientist. That's why I have like 20 Splice packs. That's why I make all kinds of different music. And that's okay.
Like, that's great.
We love that.
Yeah.
That's a powerful. I think you're 100% on defining yourself as a sound scientist, and I actually I love that. I think that's great. I think, what is it? Best bald. What was your
best
your
bald
your best
sound
bald
scientist?
Best bald scientist.
Oh yeah.
I'm all for the alliteration.
Would it be like more sound like sound pharmacist, because medicine?
Whoa.
Anyway.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, don't get up. Don't. I got one more. I got one more. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, I would be remiss before you go if we didn't ask.
You literally pulled him back into the chair.
Yeah,
so.
I got it. I got to get this one.
Is it a challenging one?
No.
Oh, I want a challenging one.
Well, we were looking at your Instagram.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of like, there's like a hard cutoff, and then like so did something happen?
History?
Yeah, did something happen to your Instagram where
when I got hacked?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that did happen.
I want to know about the
story
happened. Because I think like a lot of people thought that it might have been a publicity stunt at first.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please
I'm the most honest person you'll ever meet.
Please. Well, please.
I wish I was that. See, if I was that good at marketing, I would be an artist.
I
wouldn't be a sound scientist.
But do you think low key? So walk us through it, because for those of you listening right now, there was a takeover, a renegade takeover of your Instagram.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, the cutoff point, everything's just archived.
Right.
Like, I actually forgot until you said that. I should probably unarchive some stuff, some historic moments.
Yeah. But I even think you maybe had a post being like, "Yo, guys, I got my account back.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was not fake, by the way."
Yeah.
So, walk us through the timeline of what happened.
So I'm in bed and I'm stoned.
Okay, that's where we start.
And
not in a rap circle, though.
Yeah, not rapping. I'm just stoned freelance.
Yeah.
And I get a text. No. I go to check my Instagram.
Yeah.
And I can't log in. I'm locked out. I'm like, this has never happened. What is going on? and I keep trying to log in, and like my password's wrong, and it's not. I don't remember the details. I just remember I couldn't get in. My Instagram account was locked, which was very strange, and I kept trying to log in, and I'm kind of, I think the stoned part is significant because when you're stoned, it's just hitting a little different. You know what I mean? It's like I'm scared. This is
Something is bad.
Something's very wrong with my life right now, and I got a text as I'm spamming, trying to log in. I get a text. That basically says,
"Oh no,
this is Instagram support." Did they?
Yeah, it was Instagram support.
Yeah.
And it was Instagram support, basically saying like, your account has been compromised.
Oh.
This is the verification thing. Like, enter the code that was sent to your phone here to like retrieve your Instagram. And I mean, look, you already know where this is going. Because I mean, this is the number one thing every security measure ever tells you is like, don't ever give it. But yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know. But
the being stoned element.
I sent the code. And dude, I will never forget ever that moment because it was immediate. The second I hit send, my heart, I was like, no, oh God, oh my God. Oh,
you were suddenly sober and you realized
immediately. And dude, yeah. And I was not. I was optimistic after that because I was like, I'm verified. I have some following. Like I'm gonna get it back. It's like I know people who know people, but that's not how Instagram works.
No,
anyone who's gone through something like that knows. I mean, they're a big platform, and they do not care about you, unless you're like Bieber or something. But
so gentlemen in another country started
Ahmet
posting.
Taslar.
Full name.
But here's the thing: it's not even like Ahmet Taslar is kind of a meme now, but those photos were just AI face generations. But it was so bizarre. He had my account, and he was like posting like 10 photos a day of random, like I think Russian people, just like a Russian grandma, and then like a Russian dude, and like no caption, just spamming.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then it started to become like selfies, right? Or like stuff like his cars and.
Yeah.
I was following.
What was Ahmet going
flexing,
through?
Like,
and then he started talking about something about his son, and like you would produce something about him listening to his music.
He was trying to hold you hostage, blackmail you.
What was that? I don't think that had anything to do with him. I think someone out there created that, and then I like played along with it. But
it was getting real. It was getting real
a whole
deep.
Saga.
This is a Netflix.
Yeah, because people saw this happening, and it was kind of hilarious.
Yeah,
but everyone thought it was like, okay, what is this leading up to? Like, what's
they
the
thought
show
you were
album
doing some marketing, some guerrilla marketing,
and I absolutely was not.
So what was going on, like when all of this?
How did it resolve?
All this heinous stuff was happening. Were you kind of just like, oh, this is just funny at this point, or?
Yeah, I kind of got over it. I thought it was hilarious.
You're like, I got stoned and got back in bed.
I would say for the first few days, I was like, man, and people, he was spamming people with Bitcoin scams and people, everyone, dude. You ever want to like just get reconnected with every person you've ever met? Get hacked on Instagram because I was getting calls from childhood friends like, bro, what's going? I'm just like, yeah, I know.
You're like, don't click the link. That's
and I feel bad because someone recently, a friend of mine who I'm not super close with, but his account got hacked, and like the stuff that I was getting sent was heinous, but could easily fall for it, right?
Oh no.
And I'm like, some poor schmo out there definitely like click the link,
dude,
So
it's not chill. I hope that.
But anyway, you got the account back.
Yeah, but I just want to say, the first few days it just became kind of funny.
Yeah.
But then it went on too long. It got to like 4 days, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. It went, I think, about 2 weeks. And every day I would just wake up and just check my management group chat, like, are we back yet?
Nothing.
Like, I started to lose hope. I was like, dude, like my main means of like promoting anything I ever do is literally just gone.
Taslar.
Yeah.
Gone to the AI.
Russian. Ahmet Taslar.
Damn.
Hey, wake up, new Taslar post.
Oh my God. Wow.
So you finally got it back. Instagram finally, you were low enough on the job order that they got to you.
They did get to me eventually, and
you survived.
But you had a really funny post about it, because I noticed it wasn't on your Instagram, but it was a funny post. Like, hey guys, I'm back. Oh my God, don't get stoned. Do not click that link.
Yeah, we'll say the lead up of your story was incredible.
It was sad. It was
because everyone was wondering, like, dude, this is a bit.
Yeah, like,
right?
what's the gag? 10 days later, they're like, all right, what's the gag?
Yeah.
It was.
We hit the pre-save link. Don't. If it texts you the pre-save link, don't hit it. That's honestly though.
I'm glad you survived that.
It's kind of just because it happened to you, and I know that you kind of have a good humor about yourself. Like, I think you understand like the cosmic kind of like, this is all kind of a joke, you know? So I could see, you know, you're probably looking at this like, all right, that was pretty good, Taslar, you know?
No, I felt very relieved too that people were like memeing it, you know? And like hitting me up. I felt supported.
People were commenting on it like, bro, that's sick.
Yeah, I remember like one of the first posts had like 500 comments. I'm like, where the hell were y'all when I was releasing XYZ? Like, why?
This is the thing. They thought you were marketing something. They were all ready to support. Little did they know you're actually a sound scientist. So
now you know.
Unfortunately, not.
Well, Medasin, thank you for coming through.
Of course.
Thanks for sharing your stories with
this
us.
was a real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad.
Likewise.
We'll probably have to have you back.
I know.
I'll come back anytime.
Aww.
20 minutes away, and I love to talk.
Incredible. All the topics covered.